Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we'll masech the Sotah daf Chaf Dalid. We're going to begin on the bottom of Chaf Gimel Amid Beis by the new parak by the Mishnah. Arusa b'shemer yavam. So if you have a woman who was engaged, Erison was performed, or for that matter, a woman who is a shemer yavam, namely that her husband died. She's childless and she's waiting to marry and do yibum with the brother. So the din is that if she gets locked up and warned, lo shosos lo notos ksuba. The din is she is not going to drink the Sotah, and at the same time we're not going to allow her to collect the ksuba. Says Rashi, shekini li oros, shekini li yavam. Obviously she was warned, but in this case it was by her fiancé. In that situation, we don't say it has the same status as a married woman. Shneimar asher tiste isha tachas isha. It's when a woman goes and does this, but she was tachas isha. She was married to her husband. Prat l'arusa v'shmer shavam. When it comes to a arus and shmer shavam, that's not your husband. It's not the same thing. It's not on the same level. Says Rashi, the shomer yavim shezinsa, when it comes, according to one opinion, so let's see this whole Rashi. Why doesn't she get ksuba? Shehi garmel la'aser atzmalav. She is the one that was the cause of this. Shenistra acher kinoi. Even though she was warned not to do it, she secluded herself with this guy, and therefore, the rule of thumb is she will lose her ksuba if she did something to cause the problem. If he's the one that causes the problem, then she'll still receive the ksuba. That's the general concept we'll see later on in the Mishnah. The Isser lo imit can mafarish b'gemara b'fil leisalon the Rav Hamnuna the shemer shavim shezizim materas yavama nehidim materas. Let's say you have a woman who is a shemer shavim and she straight out was mazana. Now she's not really married because her husband died, and she's waiting to do yibum. And this guy, there's a zika, but it's not strong enough that even if she was mazana, that she's going to be usher to him because it's not really her husband. Mihu little boy leminsav isha zaina. He doesn't have to marry her, even though technically it's a mitzvah. You should do yibum. That's what the Torah would hope you would do. Maybe nowadays it's chalitza anyway, but in this situation, he doesn't have to. He has seen the ksubasa. That's why she loses the ksuba. So even if you want to tell me that technically he could still marry her, but he doesn't have to. And therefore, if he doesn't, it was because of what she did, that she was mazana, is what caused him to make this decision. Therefore, she won't get a ksuba. Fine. Amana l'kain gadol. So this is going to go to question 9. Let's just read question 9, but we're going to have to see it when we get to the Gemara. Ha'im yesh kinoi l'arusa v'shomeres yavam l'ha'aser olav. So the question is, if she was warned, is she going to become usher? So the Gemara is going to end up deducing l'chara by both of them. Yes, she's going to be usher to them. But the truth is, as we saw in Rashi, that even in a situation of a shemesh yavam, if she was mazana, she's still going to be mutter to him. Okay, but we'll see the answer when we get to it. Alman kohen gal the grush v'chutz kohen hedget. So these are situations in which we're dealing with a Isser Lav. An Almana is not supposed to marry Kohen Gadol, and a divorced woman is not supposed to marry a regular Hedget, a regular Kohen. And for that matter, Mamzeres, as we continue to Chav Dalad with Aleph, if a woman is a Mamzeres, or a Nesina Rashi reminds us as Min HaGivoini v'Yasim L'Bo B'Yisrael, they're usher to come to Klal Yisrael, as the Gemara in Yevamos says, that David was geyser upon the Givoinim, because they were engaged in trickery, and their conversion wasn't necessarily authentic, and therefore they were made into chaytze eitzim, shavimoyim, wood choppers, water carriers. So in that situation, if this is her status and she marries Yisrael or Bas Yisrael Mamzer Lo Nesin, so it doesn't matter if the man or the woman is the one who has this bad yichus, Lo Shaisas Lo Notas Ksuba. She's not going to drink Sotah. Tolo Nemr, says Rashi, Parsha El Borui L'Kaima. It's only someone who's really fit to marry. Only someone who's fit that you're supposed to marry. But a almana is not supposed to marry Kohen Gadol, and a garusha is not supposed to marry Kohen. And so therefore, because of that, she's not going to get. She will not have to drink. And v'lonatas ksubasa. It says Rashi v'afagav dishar almana Kohen Gadol kansua. Normally, when it comes to almana Kohen Gadol, we're not going to kanat kansua rabban ksuba. We generally do not kanas, as the Gemara Ksubas discusses. Zu ein law. Distirasa garmila, because again she locked herself up. She's the one that caused the problems. So since she's the one that did it, so the din is that she's not going to get ksuba. And then it continues and says these are the situations where a woman will not drink and she's not going to get ksuba. Ha'imeres temeani, if she just straight out admits that she was guilty, that she in fact did commit adultery. Shabala Adim Shi Tameya. You have witnesses to testify to that effect. And now we're going to go to TA4, which is going to answer this right away. Mandin in Ksuba Bomeris Ani Shaisa. If she just flat out says, I'm not drinking this. She didn't say that she's guilty, but she says, I'm not drinking. Or Shabalu Oimer Adim Mashke. She's willing to do it, but her husband refuses. Or what if the husband dies before she drinks? So these are the three questions. We're going to see them right now, straight from the Mishnah. This is TA4. If she says, "V'ha'imeres eini shaisa," so if she says, "I will not drink," so the din is, as I drink, that she will not get the ksuba, and it's because she's the one that caused it. She is the problem. She is the one that is initiating the problem. So therefore, she doesn't get. So that answers that part of the question. Back in the Mishnah, let's say the husband says don't drink, or the husband has relations on the road before they make it to be tested. In that case, she will get her ksuba, but she will not drink. So in this situation, again, when we're dealing with any mashke, if she says, if he says, I'm not going to let my wife drink, then she does get the ksuba, because he's the one that caused the problems. And therefore, the same thing when he had beer with her. Says Rashi, Shu garam la, shel tishta noitas ksubasa. Obviously, they were both agreeing to it. We're dealing with two consenting adults, but the reality is that since he had beer with her, he didn't have to. And the fact that he did, he caused this. Now that this took place, that she won't be able to be tested by the Sotah, and therefore because of that, she's not going to get the ksuba. She will get the ksuba. So if she says, I'm not drinking, she won't get the ksuba. But if the husband says, I don't want my wife to drink, then she will receive her ksuba. Mesu balein, let's say her husband dies, ad shalom shosu, before she drank, which is exactly what we just asked in TA4. So it's a machlokas beis Shammai and beis Hillel. That's basically the what the answer is. Beis Shammai omrim noitlas ksuba v'lo shaisus. Beis Shammai says that she will be able to collect the ksuba from the yorshim, and she will not drink. Beis Hillel omrim o shosos o notlos ksubasan. Either she drinks or she gets her ksuba. Now we said, what do you mean? How could she drink? Her husband's not alive. It's not tachasi sheikh. So that we've said before, then Rashi explains, since she's not able to drink, lo notus ksuba. The Gemara will explain this. That's the reason why she won't get her ksuba. They're totally zebazet. So if she's not able to drink, she won't get her ksuba. And since she's not able to because her husband's not alive, so then she won't get the ksuba. So this is the machlokas beis Shammai beis Hillel, which is brought down numerous places before, which we'll discuss later. Muberes chavero imanikas chavero lo shosos lo dotos subasa. David Rameir. What is this case? Muberes chavero. So you have this. Your a muberes. She's pregnant, and it's her friend Shemes benichu muberes manika. She left this nursing child, and she's nursing. O Shigirsha, she got divorced. Vimu Beres, and she's pregnant. O Menika, or she's nursing. Vasruach Chachamim Linase, we say she's not allowed to get remarried. Ad Shehe Havlad Ben Beis Shanim. We wait until the child is 2 years old. Shekach Zman Yenikasai. That was, at least at that time, the typical amount of time that a child was nursing, and then they'll be weaned at 2 years old. So this guy, before the 2 year time, he was supposed to wait until 2 years because she's pregnant. So again, she was married to someone else, or whatever it was, and now she's nursing this child. And now, before the 2 years, he married her. Bikini law, and then she locks herself. He warns her. She was not supposed to be married. So the din is that if you marry a woman who again is muberes chaverai, menekas chaverai, lo shaitas lo notos ksuba. Dear Rabbi Meir. Fine. So within those 2 years, since he wasn't supposed to marry her, so therefore she's not going to drink and she doesn't get a ksuba. Amrim yachahu hafrisha lachziro achazman. He's able to separate from her and to remarry her after a certain amount of time. Of course, after 2 years are over, right? So Rashi says, Hilkach ru'uyil ishas karim bey. Therefore, the truth is, since he's capable of doing this, so it does fall into the category of ishus. It's not like a case of an almana kohen gadol, which an almana is really never allowed to marry this kohen gadol, or a grush is never allowed to marry a kohen. However, it's like almost like a devastation matirin. There is a time after 2 years that technically she's allowed to get married. We just don't want her to get married now because we're concerned. The Chachamim were that if she gets married and gets pregnant, that may take away from the baby that she's nursing, and that baby's life could be in danger, in jeopardy. So we want to make sure that this child is properly nourished during the first 2 years before she gets remarried and possibly gets pregnant. Ionis, so if you have a woman who is an ionis, which means she cannot give birth, she's not capable of that, she doesn't have the simanim of a woman, she doesn't have breasts, she doesn't have any pubic hairs, she doesn't have a heavy voice, so brought down Rashi. Uzakena, or you have an older woman, She'enu royal leiled, or you have a woman who just cannot give birth, says Rashi, Shishasas kais ikrin, because maybe she drank something which makes it impossible for her to give birth, right? It's not just a birth control pill, it's something that makes it that you become incapable of having a child. Vesursa kaima, so what are you supposed to do? You're not really allowed to marry such a woman. It's sad, but the reality is, if you have children, gesund to hate, you're a mekayim the mitzvah purabu. But the problem is, if we're dealing with an individual who doesn't have kids, you're supposed to have kids, so you're not allowed to really marry such a woman because she's not going to provide you with children. As harsh as that sounds, she could marry again a man who has children, but she's not supposed to marry a man. So therefore, because of that, lo noitlois ksuba l'shaisais, she doesn't get the ksum, and he's not able to drink. She doesn't drink because it's only when she's royal l'kaima, and she's not royal l'kaima. That's not true. You don't have to have children with her. You can still remain married with her, but in the time of polygamy, you're allowed to have more than one wife. And therefore you have another wife, a woman who is capable of having children, and you have this other wife who, Rachmanis, isn't able to have kids. And therefore, there's nothing wrong. You're able to, in that situation, she's fit for you to marry. This shouldn't be an issue as long as you're able to be mekayim the mitzvah elsewhere. When it comes to all their situations, all the women, they have a choice: drink or you don't get your ksuba. But if you decide not to drink, you're not going to get the ksuba. Eishes kayin, shaisa umuteres l'bala. If you have an eishes kayin that she's allowed to drink, and once it turns out that she was really innocent, so she's allowed to go back to her husband. The Gemara is going to say, "L'choy, that's a different pashut. Why not? Right? She was never had tashmish." Eishes saris shaisa, the wife of a saris, says Rashi, kegayin shenistaris la'achar shenasa. That he only developed this issue of being like castrated or incapable of having kids only after he got married. So when he got married, he was allowed to. He was a normal, healthy person, and then afterwards, not. Shekad meshchivas baal boil. So in the shchiva of the husband came before the boil. It has to be that the husband actually had tashush with his wife. Ali de kol rayos. So in that case would be shaisa. Gemara is gonna again say pshita. At the time he was perfectly fine. Ali de kol rayos mikanin. In all forms of arayas, we warn the wife. Chutz min hakatan umimi she'eino ish, excluding if she's with a katan, because the pasuk says v'shachav ish osa, or someone who's not a man. The Gemara is going to explain who's not a man. Ve'elu shebeis mikanan lehen. There's actually situations that if we see that she's engaged in misnagus of pritzus, that the Beis Din will actually do the warning themselves. Mishnis charish bala. Let's say the husband is a cherish, or nishtata, or nebuch is a shaita. So the husband doesn't have the ability to speak. He's a cherish and a medaber, so he can't speak. Or someone's a shaita, so because of that he can't do things for himself. So we'll step up. Let's say the husband's in jail, but we all know what's really going on while her husband's in jail. Lola hashkaisa amru. We don't say this so that she will drink, because it is required that the husband does it. Because the pasuk says, Rashi quotes, "The be'ina b'kini v'hevi." Rabbi Yossi lo boy kini v'hevi. So we didn't get Rabbi Yossi, but it's saying that the husband has to bring her. So certainly she's not going to drink. El will paisel m'ksubasa. They'll passel her from the ksuba. Rabbi Yossi Amr afal hashkaisa. The truth is that the husband's not going to be in jail forever. So when he gets out of jail, then he'll bring it to the Beis Mikdash, based on our warning. Okay. Because according to him, this is the part of the Rashi which I stopped at, that Rabbi Yossi doesn't require bikini v'hevi. The husband doesn't have to be necessarily the one who gives the warning. Says the Gemara. Mishnah Hudul Shasya. So going back to our Mishnah said that an arus and a shemer shavam lo shaisais. She doesn't drink. Now, what does that mean? It must be only she doesn't drink. Hakinoi mekanalo. However, she will become forbidden when warned, and therefore she'll become usher, because the fact that it says that she's not going to enter ksuba, so it must be that she becomes usher. And therefore, that's what is coming. So fine, she's not going to drink, but that's minhan immediately the tano baron daber el bnei Yisrael v'yamarta. So what do we learn out from this pasuk? Which the whole pasuk is v'yamarta lehem ishish kisitz ishto mo moil. So l'rabos arusa v'shmer shavam l'kinoi. That's coming to include, when it comes to these people, either arusa or shemer shavam, that she, upon being warned and secluding herself, even though she's not going to drink, nonetheless, it'll be enough to answer her, and she won't get her ksuba. Masnisin mani, who's this like? Rabbi Yonasan he desanya. The pasuk says tachasi sheikh, while she's under her husband, while she's married to her husband, pratla rusa. It excludes an arusa, because an arusa, again, you're not completely married. You're not married yet. Yachol shani moitza af shemer shavam. So he says maybe also shemer shavam. Tamal ish deber Rabbi Yeshaya. So Rabbi Yeshaya learns out from ish. Actually comes to l'rabois, comes to include the shemer shavam, which I think finally we got to the answer over here. Question 9. Again, he'imish kinu erusa shemer shavam. So I wrote, is this answer correct? So it says, he wrote over here, larusa machlokis shemer shavam yesh kinoi. According to this, it sounds pretty clear that Rabbi Yeshaya is only making a distinction when it comes to shemer shavam. So an arusa is definitely excluded, and a shemer shavam is kinoi, right? Fine. Rabbi Yonasan Omer tachas sheikh prat l'shemer shavam. Oitzi shemer shavam v'lo oitzi es arusa talmud l'omer asher tishte isha tachas isha prat l'Arusa. So according to Rabbi Yonasan, he excludes both of them. Fine. So in fact, again, l'chayra, I'm not sure if this is correct the way it's written, but l'chayra, it doesn't seem right. It seems like the machlokes is really. I'm just going to write this down. Isn't the machlokes by Shemer Javam? Sometimes they make mistakes, but that's l'chayra, the simple reading of the Gemara. That's what it sounds like. Okay, and that's how we're going to learn it. So, based on psukim, the question is, should they taka be asert? So, fine. So, mar alim arusa. So one of them says that arusa is more strict to kiddushi didei because it's her. There was actual kiddushin that took place over here. Masaykan al yadai, and there's a din skila. We know by nar hamarasa. Umar Rav Yeshaya alim alei shemesh yavam delo mechsra masir chuppah, because the shemesh yavam you don't need chuppah. All you need is bia. So the question is, which one is closer to being completely married? On one hand, shemesh yavam, because all you need to do is have bia, and that's it. You don't need chuppah, like a wedding. On the other hand, an arusa, she received the kedushin. It wasn't just that nothing happened. There was an action that was done with this man. And also, we know there's a din that there's skila. Fine. So therefore, they, based on that, is how should the miyut be learned out for the shemer shavam for the rusa. Okay. Rabbi Yonasan hayishish ma'yavadle. So according to Rabbi Yonasan, Rabbi Yonasan learns tachas ishech excludes a shemer shavam. And then he says tachas isha is prat larusa. So what does he do with ish? Because according to Rabbi Yeshai, he learns out ish to exclude the shemer shavam. So miboyle lo rabos eishes cheresh ve'eishes shaita. It's coming to actually include the wife of a cheresh, the wife of a shaita, the eishes, as we continue to Chavdal Medbeis, also the wife of a shi'amum, of someone who is deranged, which again it's similar, seemingly similar to that of shaita. Rabbi Shaya hay tachas isha maya. What does he do with that? Miboyle lo hakish ish isha, the ish ish, that he compares them. Well, what does that mean? The Gemara is going to explain what exactly the halachas are that they're compared. Elatayim b'diksive hanikroi. The only reason why we make these dinim regarding an arusa or shemer shavam is only based on psukim. Halav hachi, if it wasn't for these psukim, haba mina arusa shasya, would we actually think otherwise that an arusa drinks? So we're bringing out these psukim to say arusa doesn't drink, but she's going to be aser. The question is, why would we think that an arusa is allowed to drink? Mei saita. V'ki asra ba'acha bar chanina midraima midaroima. Also, he came. He brought the following learning based on the pasuk mibalde ishech mishikad mashchivas balaboil. There's a din that it has to be that the man, the husband, had bia before the boil potentially had bia. So velo shikad mashchivas boil bal. But in the rusa, if they're just engaged, which means she accepted kedushin, she got some money, an arusa is not allowed to have tashmish with her husband. They're not fully married. It's only erison. So she's patur from drinking anyway. So the Gemara says, maybe it's not so clear. It's possible maybe the man actually did have bia with his future wife while she was still beves avia. Doesn't mean it was right, but that's maybe what he did. So he did have bia first. So maybe you would think an arusa would drink meisait. What do you mean? Doesn't it have to be that the husband has to have tashmish with her before the suspected man, the adulterer, had tashmish? Yeah, but maybe they did. Maybe they did. So the Gemara says, let's look at Rashi. Actually, let's hold off. The kavasi gabi shemer shavam. So since we're linking the case of an arusa to a shemer yavam, they must be the same. So what happened? Her husband died. They're childless, and she's a shemer yavam. So the husband, this brother, had bia with her, and therefore, because otherwise, what's the chiddush to think that she doesn't drink? Of course, she doesn't drink. He didn't have bia with her. He has to have had bia to even have had the havamina, because otherwise, it has to be that you're koydem the baal to the boil. So it must be that they had bia. So it must be by shemer yavam. Yeah, the yavam also had bia with her. So one second. That's a little bit more problematic when we're dealing with shemer yavam. Shemer yavam, korosli ishto mal yosehi, ya'im rav kana koil. We know that if he had bia, this yavam, she's now a full-fledged wife, and she taka would drink. So how could you say that she doesn't drink? Right? According to Rav, that she, in this case, once you have bia with her, even if it wasn't l'shem ishus, it doesn't make any difference because she's your shemer yavam. So there's such a strong zika that even that type of a bia, all the dinim apply. And that's what Rav says, as Rashi tells us. Whether you had bia on purpose, it wasn't l'shem ishus, it was nus. Kaina, doesn't matter. You're married to her. Period. Yom Rav Kana to Katani, when it says you're kind to her, masnisin kana koil. Im kain hu machil v'truma. Let's say he's a kain, now she can eat truma. V'yarsha, and he'll inherit her. Umatamala, if he's a kain, he can be matama her if she dies. And here's the key words: umashken, she'll drink. Upaita beget chalitza, she's going to be pottered with a get without chalitza because she's your full wife. You don't do chalitza anymore because she's your wife, so you have to give her a get. Hopefully never, but if you decide to divorce her, you don't do chalitza, you do get because she's married. So the question is, according to the sheet of Rav, it doesn't make any sense because the shomer yavam, if you have bia with her, she's your wife, and therefore she's your wife, she would drink. So how can we say, oh, the case over here, the whole reason why we have a pasuk is bedavk in a situation where maybe he did have tashrish with her. Well, if he had tashrish with her, then why would we say that maybe she would drink? She would, because she's your wife. The answer is you're right, but that's only according to the sheet of Rav. Because Shmuel, the Armel Loikana, El Debarim Hamurim B'Parsha, according to the sheet of Shmuel, is Chaylik Rav. And he says in the Parsha, what Parsha? So Rashi says, the Parsha is Yavama. L'komel Shem Achib, B'Nachlasu Paiter Beget. As we said, that on some level, she's your wife. Again, you don't do chalitza anymore, you have to give her a get. But it doesn't mean that she's really your full-fledged wife. And therefore says Rashi, V'ashmi'inan, de biyaso leha, hein l'kuche ishus, shaloi, hilkach, l'mehavi, l'midi de itmar b'hach parshasa, rabinhu, krab, nisuin halol. L'midi achrina, lam nisuin inhu. She's not really married to you. And therefore, because of that, Takesh would not drink. If the man, therefore when it happens, we do find that the Baal had tashmish before the boil, potentially had tashmish, and therefore, technically, you would think maybe she should drink by Shomer Yavam, and therefore that's maybe the reason why we have Sukkim to say that she won't. So Yihachi 1 second. If you want to tell me that we're going to be passing like the sheet of Shmuel, so Lema Rav the Amr Krav Yishaya, Shmuel the Amr Krav Yonasan. So maybe we should say that Rav, because we're establishing here that this is in accordance to the sheet of Shmuel. So therefore, this whole notion in Machlokas of Rabbi Yeshaya and Rav Yonasan can be totally whether you hold like Rav or Shmuel, whether or not when it comes to a Shomer Yavam, whether or not in fact she's like your wife or not. So Amrulach Rav, no, Ana de Amr Filo Rav Yonasan, I can hold like him. Now Rav, who says you're kind of a koil, so why would he hold like Rav Yonasan? Mid Israch Krol Miyuta, from the fact that I need a pasuk to exclude her. Otherwise, if she wasn't his wife, you don't need a drasha. It's pashut, she's not included. Machlal de ishto mal yosehi. The fact that you have a pasuk is gufa proof that in fact she really is your wife, and that's the reason why he uses to say no. That's why she's completely your wife, and therefore you're kind of a koil. As we continue, Chav Ham and Av, Ushmuel Omer another Rafil Rav Yeshaya Mid Israch Kol Ribuya Machlal Delavish to Hiklal. Maybe Pumfakert. The fact that you have a pasuk to say this to mention it, it must be to tell you that she's really not like your wife. So depending on how you want to look at it, but it's not necessarily, are we pigeonholing, saying that it's dafka that Rav has to hold like him and Shmuel has to hold like him. It's possible that they can hold like the different shitas independently. But again, based on this, we're saying that it's shaykh to come up with a situation where the husband did have been with her, and therefore technically you would think maybe the Rusa and a Shemer Shavam Taka would be Shaisis, and that's why we had the Psukim to say otherwise. Ad Kan.